Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the CDL podcast. This is going to be the post-Minnesota show. We had a crazy weekend of COD, and I'm super excited to talk about this one. I realized this weekend while watching it that I truly love doing this podcast when I was sitting there the last week and I had no event to react to, nothing to watch, and I really missed kind of going over some of my thoughts and talking about what happened in the weekend and what I thought, power rankings, all that kind of stuff. I really missed kind of a week off of that, so I don't know what I'm going to do for that 3-4 month off season that we have, but I'm really excited to react to the event, get into some hot takes, some new power rankings, which have shifted a lot, believe it or not. I'm sure you can believe it, especially towards the bottom of the power rankings. The teams in the bottom have kind of shifted up and down a little bit. But before we get into it, I want to make sure to remind you guys to leave a like on this video and comment any thoughts as we go along. If you have a thought about one of my takes or anything, if you agree, disagree, or want to ask some questions about it, I'd appreciate that. Or even ask questions that I could answer on future podcasts, as well as subscribe for more content. There'll probably be a video tomorrow for the predictions for the Paris event that's coming up this weekend. It'll be a weird back-to-back day or maybe 2 and 3 day upload for the channel, which doesn't usually happen, but due to the event being pushed back this week, we have 2 events, back-to-back weekends, which we haven't really had all year. So yeah, just make sure to look out for that. We're going to start, as we always do in these kind of episodes, by going over the matches, which were very interesting to say the least, pretty unexpected. So many 3-2 matches. My actual predictions on who I picked to get out of groups and stuff were pretty off. I think that's honestly the first time I'm saying that. Usually my predictions, I get 3 out of 4 for who's coming out of groups, and I'm almost always accurate with the final, or at least one team in the final. And this time, I did have one team that I predicted to get in the final. I didn't pick the winner right. I think I picked 2 out of 4 teams out of groups, so my predictions were actually off. But I did say I wouldn't be shocked if Guerillas make a run. I was completely wrong about Florida, but Guerillas made a run, so I was kind of right in saying I wouldn't be shocked if that happened. But obviously, my predictions were not great for the first time in this podcast history. So without anything else to say, we're going to just get into some of the matches, go over them quickly, not too in-depth on anything, because I'd rather spend more time talking about power rankings and individual teams and stuff. So yeah, looking at the matches here, we're going to first go with Group A, just the group stage of it, and then down to Group B, the group stage of it, and then semifinals and final, kind of like that. So in Group A, the top of the bracket was Faze Surge, and this was a controversial matchup, as any of you that watched the weekend know. Faze did win at 3-2. I'm sure every single person expected Faze to win this, probably not at all in the fashion that they actually did. They reverse swept Seattle Surge. They were down 2-0. Surge looked really good with Proto and everything, and we'll get into that a little later. But then there was a tech issue or something like that, where the tech had to be reset because the broadcast went down, or the broadcast was having a ton of issues and the cloud server crashed. So there was a 45-minute break between maps 2 and 3, between the search and the CTF. And this is addressed. They implemented a new rule where there can be a maximum of a half-an-hour break between maps for technical difficulties or something like that, or for tech resets. But this really kind of changed the course of the tournament, in my opinion. I think that, obviously FaZe are a better team, and 9 times out of 10 they're probably going to beat the Surge, but I think the Surge were going to win this match. I think FaZe had a lot of really lucky things go their way. Obviously they played well and were able to win this match and clutch up, being down 2-0, but I think if that tech reset doesn't absolutely kill the momentum and vibes, and probably knowing some of the players on Surge slacked, they probably lost Full or Octane, with the way the year has gone for them especially too. It's not like this has been a successful year for them. They were already extremely frustrated with the league, the game, everything, and then for this to happen when they have a completely new scrap roster, playing the best team in the game, they're up 2-0, then this happens, it kind of feels rigged in a sense. Obviously I don't think it was, but you can see how with the tilted mindset they probably have, they kind of thought it was. So this match, unfortunately for Surge, they get reverse swept and fall 3-2. They probably should have won. They looked pretty darn nasty in this matchup. They just didn't care, and they were just flying around, and they looked pretty good. So then in the Group A, the second matchup in the winners round 1, it's another weird situation. It was Minnesota Rocker versus Dallas Empire. I think pretty much everybody would expect Empire to win this, but you'd give Minnesota a fighting chance, as they've been a solid top 5 team all year. But they got smoked pretty bad. It was 3-1, but it wasn't too terribly close of a series, and Alex dropped like a 0.5 in this series. It seems like they said he had like some kind of thumb injury because he didn't play the next day in their match versus the Surge. The first injury substitution in CDL history. I don't know how many there really will be, as obviously you can't really get hurt too much in game in Call of Duty unless like something happens out of the game and you're out somewhere and you get hurt in some way, which is I think what happened to him. I'm not 100% sure, but hopefully his thumb gets better and we're able to see him play, because the Rocker are a solid team and I don't want to see them taken out by some fluky thing, like an injury to one of their players, especially one of their better players like Alex. So they fall here kind of down a man basically. They fall 3-1 to the Empire, no shock. And then in the knockout match here, the first one, it was Rocker Surge, and the Surge are able to win this one 3-2. Once again, they looked very good. Minnesota, can't really fault them too much here. They were playing with Exceed. Exceed had a pretty bad series, but once again, he was a pretty good player at Champs last year. I believe he played on that Sicario team with like Tommy and Chino and Linny, and I can't remember who else was on the team. One other, I think, established player. But I think he's a pretty decent player. He just unfortunately was thrown into a situation where he hasn't played a pro match all year, hasn't scrimmed with them all year, and was just thrown in and had to play against players like Octane and Slacked and Apathy, who haven't been that good this year, but they're still Octane, Slacked, and Apathy. And they won 2 games, so not a horrible showing for them, but Surge win this one. And then the first qualifier match in the winners portion, it was the Atlanta Faze versus the Dallas Empire. Dallas gets up 2-0. Shotzi's disgusting. They get up 2-0, and Faze, for the second time in 2 series in the tournament, reverse sweeps them. Kind of a crazy series. It was cool to watch. Probably my top 2 teams, especially after what happened to Huntsmen this weekend. My top 2 teams. And they went at it. Great series. Faze is able to take it 3-2. Not much more to say about that one. Another reverse sweep. Faze showing that they can be pretty clutch even when they're not playing very well. They knocked Dallas down to the losers. It was Surge versus Empire in knockout match 2, and Surge was just frankly outmatched here. I think they had lost full from that Faze series, were able to beat Rocker, and they just kind of had chalked it. All of them were saying like Shotzi's the best player in the game after the series. He's ridiculous, which he is. Empire takes it 3-0. Not too much to talk there. So the teams that came out of there were Faze and Empire. I got that one right. I mean, shouldn't be that shocking. That was pretty easy, and I don't want to toot my own horn for that one. That was a pretty easy prediction to make, especially with an injury to Alex. I mean, that was like the easiest prediction you can make all year, Faze and Empire coming out. So then down to Group B, the first matchup in winners was the LA Guerillas, the shocker team of the tournament, versus the Toronto Ultra. I picked Ultra on this one because I had thought that Toronto was going to be in the form that they were last tournament. They looked very good, looked like they could have made a final. But then they had some kind of issue where Classic wanted to go home or something to like see family, or I think like see some kind of family members who were sick, or even if they weren't sick, he just wanted to see his family. Hasn't probably seen them in a while in a time like this where you can't really travel. And I believe he did go home to New York to see his family. And they said, well, you can't scrim now, which is weird considering it's an online league and we play an online game. He could very easily still scrim with his team, and New York and Toronto aren't that far. I mean, the connection probably wouldn't be that much different. It might even be better since he's playing with other United States players mostly. But Toronto they just did not look good this weekend. Just a weird situation. I can't believe I heard it on, I think, the Codcast. You got to be more player friendly. I mean, these players are thing that make your organization go around, what bring you your popularity and your success. I mean, you can have as good of a structured organization and as good of a management team and as good of a marketing team as you want, but I mean, if you're not good to your players and they don't want to play for you, I mean, you can have as good of a marketing team and that stuff, like I said, but if you go 0-12 in matches, it doesn't really matter unless you're the Huntsmen and you're just that popular no matter what, like they always will be with Hecz and Scump and those guys. But Guerillas win this one 3-2. It was huge for them, in my opinion, to clutch this one, because I think if they are knocked down to losers right away, they would be knocked out, especially since they played Huntsmen right away. And I know they did beat Huntsmen later on, but if they lose right away, then they lose and they're like, oh, great, we have to play Huntsmen after a loss. I think that probably goes differently, and Huntsmen probably beats them because they probably just lose full. But Guerillas take this one 3-2 and knock Ultra to the losers. And then the Group B second match. To me, this came as a huge shocker. To some of you who knew Awakening and might not have. But Huntsmen lose 3-2 to Florida Mutineers here in a very good series. But in my opinion, it was a shocker because I didn't know really anything about Awakening. I knew he had made champs last year, I think, and he's been a really good AM player. But I thought maybe they'd struggle a little bit right away to kind of like find their roles and consistency because, I mean, they're playing a super story team with great players like Huntsmen. Not that Florida doesn't have great players, because they do, but I just thought maybe it'll take a little bit for them to get their groove. Huntsmen seemed to be in their groove, so Huntsmen will win this one 3-1, 3-2, and Florida looked horrible at the last event or two, so I thought, Huntsmen take it easy. But Awakening is disgusting. Pharaoh is disgusting. Skies is disgusting. They're all great. Havoc's great. Unbelievable. Frosty's finally, like, I mean, he started to come into his own last year at the end of the year, but he's really picking it up even more. They beat Chicago 3-2, a shocker for me. And then in the knockout match 1, Ultra Huntsmen, not much to talk about here. No surprise, the lack of practice Ultra before the event get taken out 3-0 by the Huntsmen. And then in the qualifiers match in winners in Group B, it was the LA Guerillas versus Florida Mutineers. I probably would have picked Guerillas to win this one still, since going into this event, I was pretty high on them, and if you know anything about me, I'm an LA Guerrilla hater almost so far this year because I thought they've been so bad. But Florida takes this one 3-1. They handled the series pretty easily. They were easily the most impressive team from Friday and Saturday to me. Empire showed a little bit of cracks, but looked very good. Faze showed extreme cracks. So up to this point, Empire was looking better than Faze despite really losing to them, and Florida was looking like the best team in the tournament. And then in the knockout match 2, Guerillas Huntsmen. I mean, if you had given this to anybody's picking Huntsmen 10 out of 10 times because they're frankly a more talented and better team. But the Guerillas search and destroy on point, and they're able to take it 3-2, a shocker of a series, and we were robbed of the Faze Huntsman matchup once again. What if Faze Huntsman, we have to wait till like Champs Final to see it or something? They're never in the same group, so we can't really see it that way. And they just can't seem to match up. It seemed like it was perfect for them to match up here. Somehow Huntsmen lose in their group, in a pretty weak group, and then, or what seemed to be a weak group going in, didn't end up being that weak of a group, but seemed like a weaker group going into the tournament, and then seemed like Faze, if they came on in losers, like they had a chance to against Empire, they'd find a way to match up with Huntsmen or something like that. But of course, we're robbed of that matchup again. We still haven't seen it all year, and there's only like 2 events and then Champs left, and we still haven't seen the Huntsmen versus Faze. When are we going to see it? I hope we get to see it at least one time, even though the Huntsmen looked a little weaker. I'm sure they're still going to be a good team all year. I just want to see that matchup one time, but we were robbed of it by the LA Guerillas of all teams. So in that group, Florida and LA make it out, which, if you know anything about my last podcast, I picked Ultra and Huntsmen. So, yep, you can give me the L for that one. And then the first matchup in semifinals, we had Faze versus Guerillas. Now, this one was a 3-2 win for Faze. Quite frankly, should have been a 3-0 for the Guerillas. They win the first hardpoint in a shocker. I believe it was Gunrunner, where they were 1-8, and Faze had like some really good, like 4-2 or better record. It was a good record Faze has, because that's a good map for them. And Guerillas were 1-8, and they said, all right, we'll play Faze in it. And then they beat them. They beat them somehow. Don't know how. And then in the search and destroy, goes round 11. There are a couple gunfights that they should have won away from winning that. And then they win the CTF. And then they win the next hardpoint. They lose the next hardpoint. They could have easily won again, and then lose the search. So they were down, or they end up, wait, no. Oh, yeah, they lost. I'm sorry, I'm getting all screwed up here. They lost the game 4 hardpoint, to make it 2-2, and then they lost the search. If you would have told me going into this that Guerillas going into the series that they were going to lose 3-2, I'd have been like, okay, they stole a respawn somehow, and then definitely want to search. But nope, they actually lost 2 searches in one series, which is their strongest game mode by far. I mean, Faze is also maybe the only team in the league that's better than them at search. But still, I would have figured that if you told me that Guerillas won a CTF, or not, I don't know why I keep saying CTF, a Dom, God, excuse me, I'm all messed up. If you would have told me that Guerillas wins a Dom versus Faze and a hardpoint, I'm telling you, there's literally no way that they lose that series, because if they win a Dom and a hardpoint, especially the game 1 hardpoint, they're guaranteed to at least get to a game 5, because that gives them 2 wins in the series. But they lose 2 searches? Unbelievable. Their best game mode. If they could take a hardpoint and a Dom off of Faze, I figured they could easily take a search considering it's their best mode, but they're unable to do that. Faze wins it 3-2, and super impressive showing from the Guerillas. They should have even 3-0'd Faze. So on their way, they could have beat Huntsmen and then even Faze. Great showing for Guerillas. Super impressed by them, which is a lot of praise coming from me considering I basically thought their team was chalked. But after getting rid of Spart, I did change my narrative a little bit. And then in the other semifinal match, we had Florida Mutineers versus Dallas Empire. I'm sure anybody would have probably picked Empire, but once again, Awakening, Pharaoh, Skies, those guys are disgusting. They end up taking this match 3-2, kind of a shocker for me, but they played extremely well. Crimsix kind of got turned on in this series. He kind of got world starred. He looked overall kind of this weekend. The rest of Empire was pretty solid, and then Shotzi was on a different level than the rest of the team. He looked amazing. You could argue he's one of the best players in the game right now. But Dallas does fall 3-2, a shocker, and Florida wins it. Then going into the final, I'm sure, once again, anybody would pick Faze because just overall consistency-wise, they are a better team than Florida. But Florida takes it 3-1. They kind of handled them pretty good, pretty easy. 3-1, didn't even have to go to 5 games to beat Faze. But, yeah, wow, Florida wins it. I couldn't believe it. And, you know, some people might like to say, like, well, Florida, they fluke won it. But that's now their second win this year. They have 2 wins. That's tied for the most in CDL. And also, for those of you that would maybe like to say it's a fluke, they beat Huntsmen in their first match. Then they beat Guerillas, which you say, oh, Guerillas isn't that good of a win. But Guerillas made it to the semifinal. They were pretty good this weekend. And then they beat Empire, and then they beat Faze. So if Huntsmen, Empire, and Faze are the top 3 teams, which I believe they are, they beat all 3 and then beat a hot Guerillas team. What a weekend from Florida. Super impressed by them. That's enough talking about the matches, though. We talked about them for plenty long. The next thing I want to go into is the new segment that we did. Not new to this episode, but it was new to our last post show. I want to talk about the winning team MVP and a non-winning team MVP. So each time I'm going to give one from the winning team because that's generally how the MVP goes, and then I'm going to give like a non-winning team player a nod. Now, for the winning team, it's generally going to be who I thought was like the best player of the weekend or had the best stats or just overall had the best impact. But then for the non-winning team, I'm not always going to go for that because I think you could say best stats on a non-winning team was probably Shotzi. He was disgusting this weekend, but I feel like Shotzi's too obvious of an answer, so you see where we go from there. But on the winning team MVP, I had a super hard time with this. I was looking at Easy Max stats, kind of going through all that stuff, and I decided to settle on Skies. Now, this isn't one that I'm saying like my choice is the right choice. Skies has to be your choice. To be honest, to me, I was looking at the players. I was like, Frosty had a solid weekend, but I don't think I'd give him MVP. Same with Havoc. I think Havoc had a very solid weekend. You can make a small case for him, but I don't think I'd give him MVP. I thought about giving Pharaoh it because Pharaoh was absolutely disgusting. I think if you say Pharaoh's your MVP, I have no problem with that. I think that's a valid choice. Because Pharaoh was the best player in S&D, and he was also very good in both respawns. He had around a 1 in both respawns, and then like a 1.18 in search, and around like a 1.02 or something like that overall. So I think he was definitely MVP caliber player this weekend. I also think you could definitely make a case for Awakening. They looked horrible. They bring in Awakening, and then they win an event. The only thing with Awakening is he had like a 0.7 or something like that in Hardpoint or Dom, one of the two. Then he had a really good, or no, I'm sorry, he had like a 0.7 in search. He had really good KDs in Dom and Hardpoint, and overall was obviously KD's not everything. He was very good in both game modes, both respawns. He struggled a little bit in search with like a 0.7, which is why I didn't want to give him MVP. Although once again, if you say that Awakening's your MVP, especially due to the fact that they were horrible, got double bopped out of a tournament without him, and then they bring him in and win an event, being the top 3 teams. If that's your argument for Awakening, completely valid. I can see him being the MVP. But I go with Skies because he blew everybody else on the team away in overall KD with a 1.32, had a 1.26 in Hardpoint, a 0.95 in S&D, and a 1.81 in Dom. 1.81 in Dom is ridiculous. He started out that one game in the final 13-0 or something like that against, actually I don't remember if it was against Dallas or Faze, but he started one game out 13-0. Obviously KD isn't everything, but to me he was just holding down all the lanes for his team, wasn't really losing crucial gunfights, was getting all the spawns rotating, and I think he was really opening up the map for players like Havoc and Awakening and Pharaoh to thrive. Frosty plays more of like a slower type of role, while Havoc and Pharaoh are kind of flying around and stuff. But I think that Skies was looking over all of them very well, playing a great turret main AR, kind of like an Octane type of role, and opened up the map for his teammates. So I think that I give Skies my MVP, although, like I said, Awakening and Pharaoh easily have an argument for the winning team MVP. If you gave it to them, no problem with that at all. Then my non-winning team MVP, I went with a weird pick. Not one that people would probably agree with, frankly. But to me, once again, I'm not picking always the most obvious pick here. I want to give some like random players shine. To me, the obvious pick here is Shotzzy. He had like a 1.25 overall and was disgusting. But to me, he seems like such an easy pick. Or you could say someone on Atlanta. But to me, nobody on Atlanta really deserved it this weekend because they just didn't play that well. All their players are pretty much even. They were like, nobody shined super far out. They just, nobody like stuck out big time. Shotzzy obviously does. And to me, you have to be at least a semifinal team to get the non-winning team MVP. So if Shotzzy doesn't get it, nobody from Dallas gets it. Nobody on Atlanta stood out, so that leaves the LA Guerillas, and I'm going Blast. Blast finally looked like the player we thought he could be coming out as an S&D star. I know a bunch of you are going to say online, it's online Blast. Yeah, whatever. I mean, that's a valid argument, but he did have a 1.17 overall KD, with a 1.13 in hardpoint, a 1.02 in S&D, and a 1.37 in Dom, kind of running that main AR type of role on the team. This team was by far, I don't think anybody can make an argument that they were not more impressive than Atlanta and Dallas. They were by far, to me, more impressive because Atlanta looked kind of lackluster. They made a final. We expect them to make a final. And Dallas was, I mean, they looked very good early and then kind of like petered out later in the tournament, but we expect them to make a semifinal easily, but we don't expect Guerillas to make a semifinal before this weekend, and Blast was arguably their best player. I think players like Saints had a super big impact, but stats-wise, he didn't have amazing stats. He had good S&D, but his respawns didn't have amazing stats, but I do think impact-wise, you could make an argument he's MVP, and then Vivid, I think you can make an extremely valid argument he's the MVP. He was disgusting in S&D all weekend. So to me, the only other valid player on that team to say MVP is Vivid. If you go Vivid, no problem with that. But I just go Blast because to me, he's a player who struggled a lot more than we thought he would coming out because he was one of the better S&D stars from like the Black Ops 3 era. So I think we expected him to be a superstar right away, and he finally showed signs of life in that aspect. So I give the MVP from the non-winning team to Blast. Feel free to comment who you guys had as your winning team MVP and non-winning team MVP. There are certainly more answers than Skies. I think you can make the argument for Pharaoh and Awakening, like I said, and I think there are certainly more answers than Blast. I think Vivid and even maybe Saints has a case for it. Now we're going to move on to the power rankings. I don't want to take as much time as I normally do on these because I'd rather get to my hot takes and talk more in depth about those. But for my new power rankings, like I said, I'm not going to go too in depth, maybe a little blurb on each one. My top three doesn't change. This might come as a shock to all you, but to me, some power rankings people like to do are based on recency bias, where like Florida would be number 1 or number 2 now since they won the most recent event. But to me, it's total body of work and amount of time you've done that work. So Faze makes the final again. They still beat Empire. So to me, even though I think Empire looked better this event, Faze is able to beat them. So I have to keep Faze above them, and they made it a round further. So once again, have to keep Faze above them. But I think people are finally starting to maybe take that spot from Faze. The reason that obviously Huntsmen don't jump Faze because they didn't make it out of groups, so how would they? Empire don't jump them only because of the fact that Faze beat them. I do think Empire looked better this weekend, but Faze beats them, so they stay 1. Empire stays 2 because how could anybody jump them? And if you're making the argument, you know, Florida could jump them, they beat them. Well, to me, like I said, it's consistency and body of work. Florida only beat them 1 time now. It was in a semifinal, and yes, Florida certainly deserves to jump because of this being their second win, but I'd like to see Florida do it for more than one event. Now, if Florida comes out in the next event they play at and they win it, or they beat Dallas again or beat Faze again, yes, then I think they jump them. But for me, I have to see a little bit more. This is one event we saw out of this roster, and they won it. I mean, you have to see a little bit more out of them. So Faze 1, Empire 2. I keep the Huntsmen at 3 over Mutineers, although I hesitated to do this. I think overall the Huntsmen have been to every single semifinal, but this past one could be growing pains with the new team. Last event they played with weaker teams then, and they win it. And this time they don't make it out of groups. They lose a Game 5 to LA Guerillas. So once again, when you lose Game 5s, it can be a little fluky, especially to a search team as good as the Guerillas. So some of you might kind of hate this pick. Especially the Huntsmen haters might hate the pick to keep them over Mutineers. But to me, Huntsmen have just been better overall throughout the year. You know, no, I just thought about this. I'm wrong. Mutineers are 3. Screw it. Weird part. Not going to cut it from the video, my little monologue about Huntsmen there. But Mutineers are actually 3. Because actually, I just thought about it. And Mutineers have beat Chicago like the last 3 times they've played, if not every time they've played on LAN and online. So Mutineers are actually 3. Huntsmen are 4. Do I think that Chicago is probably a better overall team with more talent than Mutineers? Yes, I do. But I just said that overall body of work matters a lot to me, and then I said Huntsmen are over Mutineers, but Mutineers has beaten them like the last 3 or 4 times they've played, including LAN and online. So Mutineers are actually ahead of Chicago, but I think these 4 teams are all on tier 1 because I think these teams can all win an event. I think kind of like Faze, Empire online are like the 1A upper echelon of tier 1, and I think Huntsmen, Florida are still in like that tier B, because when it comes down to it, if it's like a Faze or an Empire versus a Huntsman or Mutineers, you're picking that Faze Empire every time just because of the caliber of player. Then at number 5, we have OGLA. They are down 1 spot from my last power rankings. This isn't a fall at all due to them, like me thinking less of them. But Florida is now a 2-time event champ that looked disgusting this weekend, and OGLA still hasn't won an event, and they didn't play. So recency bias does kind of kick in here, and OGLA goes to 5, starting out my tier 2. Subliners fall to 6. Once again, same thing as OGLA. Nothing that they did wrong. I still think that they're a very good team with potential to win an event. But Florida has to jump them, which, by the way, Florida jumped from 9 all the way to 3 in these power rankings for me, which is a huge jump. The roster change really did wonders for them. But Subliners, they only drop here due to Florida becoming so much better. I still think they're in that tier 2. And then London sits at my 7 spot, which... they're at my 6th spot once again. They also dropped 1. That is simply due to, once again, the fact that Florida jumps. So I think London still has that potential to win an event, and I think they're in tier 2. Now, this might come as a shocker to all you. Maybe the biggest jump of the week besides Florida jumping from 9 to 4. The LA Guerillas are at 8 for me. That's another big jump. They went from 11 to 4. Not 11 to 4, 11 to 8. So a pretty big jump. They're in 8, so it doesn't sound very good. But to me, the fall off after 8 is pretty big. So, I mean, to me, that's a big deal that they're at 8. And to you, some of you might be like, wow, they're 8 out of 12. That's bottom third. That's not very good. But to me, it seems like that's pretty good for them because, I mean, they've been 11 or 12 all year for me. I think they've been 12 every single time except for last week they were 11, and now they're 8. And I actually am going to put them in that tier 2 kind of towards the bottom of it, like a 2B, with OGLA, Subliners, and London kind of being 2A. Then LA Guerillas is like 2B. To me, they're an extremely good team with good search, so I put them at 8. Biggest jump, or one of the biggest jumps with Florida. Then number 9, the biggest faller of the week by far, Minnesota. I kind of hate to say it, but I kind of think they're done. I don't know if they play at the next event. I believe they do, so we'll see what happens there. If Alex is out for an extended period of time, they definitely will be done because I don't think they have a substitute player on their team that can nearly fill in the role that Alex does if they don't make a roster change. So they fall here. To me, they've fallen out of tier 2. I now put them in tier 3. They just... teams caught up to them. Teams know the game as well as they do, and they're just getting outclassed now. Unfortunate because I really do like Minnesota. They're one of my favorite, like, personally. Not even like just to watch. I like the players in the team. I'm from near the area. I go to college near the area, so I don't know. I just like Minnesota, but unfortunately, they fall to 9. I could see them easily getting back up into that top 4 if they can get back into form, and especially if the league goes back to LAN, I think they get a lot better. But unfortunately for them, they fall to 9, which makes me kind of sad. And then also in that tier 3, kind of with them, I'm putting Seattle Surge. I believe I had Surge at 10 last time. Yeah, Surge stay the same at 10. To me, the Surge are the best team from this 9 to 12 range, which sounds weird. Then why don't I have them ahead of Minnesota? Because this isn't necessarily the best team. It's overall body of work. And Minnesota, to me, still has a better body of work than Surge. They have way more points, and they've been better throughout the year. But I put the Surge here at 10, and I think they are in that tier 3 too, because I actually think that they have potential now to get to some semifinals. I think that Proto actually helps them. We'll get into that in my hot takes a little bit. 11, another one of my biggest falls, Toronto Ultra. The classic thing is just a joke. What a horrible organizational decision to not put your players first and allow them to see their family. Like, are you kidding me? Let your players see their family. I mean, they're still people at the end of the day. If they have to travel out of state for a couple days, it's an online league, online job, they can still scrim. Let them see their family. Fall to 11, also because of organizational issues. And they're also in like a tier 4. The other team in the tier 4, I was going to put them in a separate tier of their own, but Toronto Ultra pissed me off with their policies with their players. So I'm going to group them in. Number 12, Paris Legion, not much to say here. I think they're the worst team, and I don't think it's that close. So they fall into number 12. So that is going to be it for my power rankings section. Let me know if you guys agree, disagree, or what you would shift around. I'm sure there's going to be some disagreement. I'm sure some of you are going to have Huntsmen still up there at 3, or you crazy Huntsmen fans might have them 1 or 2. I'm sure you might have OGLA lower, or Subliners lower, or London up higher, or whatever. Guerillas up higher after this weekend for some of the recency bias power ranking type of people. You might have Guerillas up at like 5 or something. But let me know. Let me know how you guys rank those. So the last little segment we always like to do at the end of our post reaction shows is takeaways and hot takes from the weekend or from the league in general. For this one, we've got some interesting takes, I think, that you guys are going to like. So they're either hot takes or like predictions or things I noticed. The first one I want to get into, I think I have, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 predictions. And then I also have, I forgot to mention at the beginning of the episode, like a bonus from a throwback COD. This one's from World War II, so we'll get into that. Like a bonus what if kind of takeaway. But the first one I want to get into, I wrote this note in my phone after watching the Florida match on Friday. And I said I need to make sure I include this in my hot takes and takeaways. So first, after that match on Friday, I wrote, Florida has a franchise 3 in Pharaoh, Frosty, and Skies. And then after that match, I said, and maybe Awakening. Because it was only one match in, so you can't call him like a franchise piece yet. But he is trending to be added to that group of 3. Didn't actually add him yet because I think people have a tendency to overreact and say, oh, this guy is disgusting, which he certainly is, but he's still never played at LAN. We don't know if he's going to be as good on LAN. And he's played one event. Now, granted, he won it and he looked very good. He's definitely trending in the direction to be part of this franchise 3, but we got to see him do it a couple more times, and especially on LAN. To me, the reason I think these 3 are franchise players, one, Skies is a young main AR. To me, if you can have a really, really good like top 3 or to top 5 main AR on a team in Call of Duty, you're always going to be up there to contend. Because main ARs, when you don't have a really good one, your team just seems to crumble because he's kind of that fulcrum that you play around. He plays the game correctly. He's going to get a lot of kills on the map and just open up the map for your subs a little more when he's watching those long lines of sites and not letting the other ARs get on the head glitches and watch those sites. So I think Skies is like a franchise piece because of how young he is, and he seems like he'd be pretty good for content and like publicity type things. Frosty to me is also like a franchise player, another young player. He's a world champ in Halo. Just seems like, I mean, last year was his first year in Call of Duty, and he seems like he's really adapting well. Like towards the end of last year, he seemed like he was adapting really well, and this year he seems very good. To me, he's a franchise type player because these players that adapt from Halo, like Enable and Formal, they always seem to get very, very good as time goes on. And to me, Frosty's, the learning curve has been a little bit slower than like it was for Formal. Here he came in, and by the end of Ghost, he was like arguably the best player. Frosties seem to have a little bit of a longer learning curve, but he's really coming around, so I think he becomes a franchise player. He's also very marketable because he has one of the bigger fan bases due to him being one of the best Halo players ever. He's got a big fan base from that, and also the fact that he was on Optic in Halo, so he's got a fan base from that. And then I also think Pharaoh is a franchise piece because Pharaoh was disgusting in World War II. We didn't get to really see him at Black Ops 4 due to the whole 100 Thieves thing and how that went down, but he was absolutely gross at World War II on that TK team and Era Eternity and stuff. So I think that Pharaoh is also a franchise piece because he's such a good young talent. So to me, you got a young, super talented flex type player in Pharaoh, a sub flex type player in Frosty, and then a super good AR in Skies. And I think even Havoc, you could throw him in there as a good sub, but I don't really think he's franchise type piece because I think he's a little bit more replaceable, being a little older and seeing that there is some more subs like him. And then Awakening is also maybe up there in a franchise piece. Another kind of hot take I have is a opinionated one. I think LA Guerillas is the new like Elevate / Gen G team this year. If those of you that don't know, some people like to make the Gen G comparison, but to me, Nagafen was disgusting at that last game. Envoy was very good at it. I think Mox was really good. I think Havoc was super, super good. Overall, I think, I can't even remember the other player on that team. Envoy, Naga, Mox, Major Maniac and Havoc. Like Major Maniac and Envoy added slaying power. They were gross that game. Havoc was also too. Naga was very good, and Mox was one of the better ARs. So to me, to compare them to Gen G, like I did with Minnesota a lot, isn't fair because they don't have the slaying talent, I don't think, that Gen G really had. I don't think Gen G gets enough credit for that. But to me, they remind me of Elevate. If any of you remember that BO3 Elevate team with Fellow, Facento, Naga, and Aqua, I mean, that team couldn't win a respawn to save their soul usually. especially not a hard point, because Naga would go negative, Vicento would usually kind of go negative, Fellow was on and off, and then Aqua was relied on for like a main AR 50 bomb every single game, and if he got that 50 bomb, they might win, but they wouldn't lose a search. Naga with the sniper, Fellow making plays, Vicento making shot calls, and Aqua just getting kills. They would not lose a search like ever. So to me, LA Guerillas reminds me of this team because a respawn win is going to be rare for them, but if they can win their hard points even at like a 50%-ish rate and their CTFs at like a 50%-ish rate, they can probably win searches at like a 70 to 75% rate. So to me, they're like that new Elevate team where they're so crazy good at search that if they can improve their respawn to even like a 50-50 type of game, they have event win potential. Elevate was never able to get that event win, but I mean, they were so close every single time. So to me, LA Guerillas are that new team. Then, to keep it on LA Guerillas for another hot take, I'm going to make a super hot take and say that they're going to keep climbing my power rankings and will continue to stay a constant threat to make semifinals and finals. Saints is crucial to this team. And if you know anything about me, I've been a Guerillas hater all year, like I said earlier. I had no faith that they were ever going to get better because I thought they were going to keep that Spart roster, and Spart was getting absolute world star 360, 180, everything turned on. But Saints added something to their team that just changed everything. Vivid seems to be coming into his own. Blast seems to be coming into his own as a player. I think just overall this team, Aqua has always been a very good player. I've always been an Aqua fan. Very, very, very good player. And then Decimate is a very good S&D player, and he seems to be coming into his own even more in this game. And then Saints, to me, is just so much better than Spart. Spart was just doing horrible in Respawn and in S&D, and he's supposed to be an S&D type player. Saints isn't really known for his S&D as much, but he's known for his ability to slay and respawns as a submachine gun player. And I think just that added slaying to this team that is generally going to struggle to slay with other teams because they're less talented. Adding his slaying over Spart, I think, was crucial to this team. And to me, they're going to keep climbing the power rankings, and I wouldn't be shocked if they crack the top 6 soon. And I think they're going to be that new Minnesota team from early in the year that's constantly making semifinals, and you're like, well, how is this team making it? They seem to be less talented. But to me, I think they're going to be a constant semifinal threat and maybe even make a couple finals or something here, which is pretty bold to me to say because they've only made one semifinal. From the second to last current bold prediction I'm going to make, I know I don't want to be one of those guys. I know it's been mentioned about a million times in like every stream possible, but I'm going to make the bold prediction that Seattle will acquire Gunless. I know like Octane said on the Codcast or whatever that it's not going to happen. It's been talked about, but it can happen. And a bunch of people said it can happen, but I'm going to say if he gets subbed in for Panda, I think Seattle has top 3 potential and even championship potential, even with Proto in the lineup. So who would they take the spot for on the top 3? I think Empire and Faze are here to stay, but I think they could get on that level with Chicago, especially Gunless having the fire to beat Chicago. I think that Seattle would fit right into there with like Optic and New York on that Huntsman level almost. Because Pander, let's be honest, he's playing the flex, which is Gunless's natural role. And I mean, if you tell me you're taking Pander over Gunless, you might be certifiably insane. Gunless is one of the best players every year. I know people might not put him in that best player conversation, but he's one of the most talented Call of Duty players in the world. If he wants to, he will be one of the best players in the world, a top 3 player every year. To me, that solves like every role issue they have. I think they're better with Proto than Karma. That sounds like sacrilegious to say, but I said it in my little update video. To me, Karma wasn't motivated to play this game. He didn't want to play it. He didn't want to play the sub role that they wanted him to play, like that, the pushing sub, entry kind of sub. He didn't want to play that, didn't want to play the game, didn't want to practice, didn't really practice all that often. And Proto is at the stage of his career where he's 21 and he's like, it's do or die for me now. So he's in absolute grind mode. So to me, Proto's actually a better player for this team than Karma, especially due to pace. Now I think that if they get Gunless, the pace of the team is fixed. I mean, Octane, I don't care what kind of year he's having, he's the best AR in the world, in my opinion, and if he's not, he's top 3. And then you have a natural flex in Gunless, who, when he wants to be, is undoubtedly the best flex in the game. And then you've got a super, super fast entry sub like Proto, who fits his role way better than Karma did, because Karma's not a fast entry sub. Then you've got like a faster support sub, who just plays absolutely cracked in Apathy. And then you've got your slower, more strategic route man sub in Slacked. So to me, the roster just makes sense. You've got your entry guy, your other fast sub, your slower, more methodical route man and Slacked, your natural top 3 flex player in Gunless, and your natural top 3 AR in Octane. To me, that team's as good as Chicago. In my opinion, that team's about as good as Chicago. Might be a really hot take, but that's why it's in the hot take section. They're better with Proto than Karma, and if they get Gunless, to me, they can enter the top 3 conversation very quickly. last current hot take is I should backtrack on one of my old statements in a way, but not in another way. I think I should slow down on the Prestinni thing. After last event, seeing them win, I think I said that they can be a multi-year Hecz Scump roster, which I still stand by. They definitely have the potential, but I think I need to slow down a little bit. To me, in-game wise, they easily still have the makeup of a multi-year Hecz Scump green wall roster because they have everything you need. They have the entry, fast sub, and Prestinni, the good support, kind of fast-paced killing subs in Envoy and Scump, and then 2 good ARs in Arcitys and Formal. So they have every tool to be a multi-year roster, but I think fans, like I've heard on other podcasts, and I think I might have mentioned, I think fans kind of got to Prestinni this weekend. I don't think at all by any means that this whole event was on Prestinni. He didn't play super well, but neither did Arcitys. Envoy could have played better. He wasn't like the normal superstar we're used to seeing. Scump and Formal actually played pretty well. They also could, Formal played really well. Scump could have improved in search like he has been all year. But Prestinni, it seemed like on Twitter, like people must have been tweeting him saying like you're garbage and like you cost it and stuff. And it seems like he just said, yeah, whatever, I'll take the blame. But knowing him and his history with kind of like struggling with some like mental health stuff and just like struggling with criticism, I could see these Huntsmen fans who are, they don't care. It sounds sad, but they don't care what you have going on in your life. They want to win, and they want you to know that they want to win. So that's the only thing I think that could break up this roster is if the fans can get to Prestinni, because there's a lot of them, and they're going to be loud, and they love Scump and Formal. They'll never blame them. They seem to love Arcitys because Scump loves him, and he's a really good player. They'll never blame him. Envoy's been the best player in the game for them, kind of like Dashy was last year, so they're all falling in love with him, so they're never going to blame him. Who does that fall down to? The new man, the guy who's going to be doing the dirty work, so he's going to have the worst stats, Prestinni. So I'm just a little bit scared that fans could get to him. Then last but not least, this episode's getting a little long, so I want to wrap it up. A little bonus throwback prediction. I wanted to mention that I was going to do it in the beginning of this podcast, but I forgot. I'm just kind of a nerd for this Call of Duty esports stuff and the history and everything. So while I was at work, kind of just doing my job, I work outside during the summers of in between college. And I was just kind of listening to some of the old Codcast from Nameless, probably like my favorite podcast to listen to. And I just started over from episode 1, which kind of on episode 1 on Spotify. I think there's more on YouTube, but the first one that's on Spotify, and it's like World War II era, kind of right after Nameless got dropped and then was about to retire. And then on like episode 5, they were talking about like pre-Seattle and post-Seattle. If you remember, that's the event in World War II where like everybody changed rosters. This is kind of like a bonus prediction from World War II. They were talking about roster changes, and Maven said something about how even after Phase 1, Stage 1 playoffs, beating Optic in 2 best-of-5s, they should have dropped replays for Slasher, and everybody was like calling him crazy. But even at the time that happened, I said with Slasher leaving, and at the time we knew Slasher was leaving his NV team, and we didn't know where he was going, I said even at the time, I think that Faze should drop replays for Slasher, even if they win this event, because replays... Well, he's a very smart player and a good player, and he's going to get your team in the right positions. I think Slasher fits with the team more because Replays was slower and just didn't have the slaying ability that Slasher did. Obviously, Slasher was faster and just a better player. I stand by that, and I'm going to make the bold prediction that I think FaZe would have won champs if they dropped Replays for Slasher. They still got top 4 with Replays, and he didn't even play that well, especially slaying-wise. Zuma was gross that game, and so was Attach, and so was Priesta. If you let Zuma go flying and Attach go flying with Priesta playing that flex role and then Slasher slaying behind them as a main AR, first of all, it takes Slasher off Rise. I know they didn't do as well at champs, but that makes Methods stay on Rise, and I think they're worse with Methods than they were with Slasher. So that makes that team probably worse. That keeps Methods off of Optic, which he was their best player down the stretch, and also, who knows, they might have gotten a worse roster since Zuma wasn't getting poached. They might have even gotten a worse player, would have made Optic worse. I think they're easily better than EG. I think a Slasher in World War II, I think they should have dropped replays for him. If they get Slasher, Zuma, Attach, and Priest in that game, I think FaZe wins champs. So a little bonus throwback prediction. Let me know if you want me to like kind of think about old hot takes I may have had and kind of like touch on them, or like kind of like some what ifs at the end of these kind of episodes. But that is going to do it for this episode. I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I'm hoping to get the prediction episode out tomorrow or Wednesday during the middle of the week, so you guys have like a couple days to hear my predictions and kind of make some discussion in the comments about what you think is going to happen, as the Paris event is actually coming up this next weekend. We have back-to-back weekends, like I mentioned. But I was really, really happy to record this, as you can tell by how much I talked in it and how long it went. I was super excited to talk some Call of Duty with you guys. Looking forward to getting that next episode out tomorrow. So be sure to give this video a listen and then also give that one a listen. And make sure to like, comment some thoughts you have or some questions, and be sure to also subscribe. Our subscribers went up a lot within these last few videos, so I want to keep seeing that number go up, and these likes and these interactions in the comments keep going up. So be sure to do all that good stuff, and I will see you guys in the next prediction episode for this coming weekend in the next few days. Have a good one.